This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We are 3 for 3 in having good primetime games to kick off week number 1. We're going to try to go 4 for 4 tonight as the Jets take on the 49ers out in Santa Clara. We're going to break down that game, outline my top bets at FanDuel Sportsbook to get you ready to hopefully close out the week on a high note. This is Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is Jim Saunas. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, here to break down the Jets at the 49ers on Monday Night Football. Letting you know my top bets at FanDuel Sportsbook and my favorite SGP for tonight's game between the Jets and the Niners. We'll dive into all that here in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. Full week of shows coming your way, Monday through Friday, from now through the rest of the season. Here in the NFL and college football side of things, we've got NFL Mondays and Tuesdays, Liv Moods with you on Tuesdays, got college football on Wednesdays, we've got Dubs Anderson every Thursday, and then Megan Payton on Fridays talking NFL player props. So a fun lineup, great guests, great shows coming your way every single weekday, Monday through Friday. To get those shows as they're posted, search for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe. If you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. And of course, these shows do go up on the FanDuel YouTube page and FanDuel TV Plus as well. If you're watching YouTube, thank you, first of all. And B, leave us a thumbs up over there. Football is back. And there's no better place to get in on the NFL action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, all customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. Plus, with FanDuel, you don't even have to leave the app to access real-time stats and data to help you make even more winning bets. Download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC. Offer ends 9/22/24. After a 3-week free trial, the full price of NFL Sunday Ticket will be automatically charged seasonally. Cancel anytime. No refunds. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. YouTube TV base plan required to watch YouTube TV. Redemption requires a Google account and current form of payment. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Let's take a look at the markets for this Monday night game between the Jets and the Niners right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, where right now FanDuel has the Niners favored by 3.5. The -3.5 is -118. Jets are at -104 on the +3.5, and the total is at 43.5 with the over at -105. Current wind speed projections are at 9 miles per hour, so noteworthy, but nothing too drastic there. I'm going to lay out my favorite bets each week here on the show, and that won't always involve a spread or a total because I'm not always going to see value in those, and we're not going to force bets here on this show. It just so happens for this week, though, that I do have value in both a spread and the total in this game. Those two bets are correlated, so maybe we'll circle back to them later on as well. Let's start things off here with the spread, though, with, again, the Niners favored by 3.5. I've actually got them favored by a decent amount more than that, and if you've listened to the show throughout the offseason, you probably can understand why, because I've been skeptical about the Jets this entire time. They are a team who have upgraded along the offensive line. Their tackle situation now light years better than it was last year. They got Aaron Rodgers back, and they've got a fully healthy Breece Hall. They've got Mike Williams, at least on a pitch count for tonight, so maybe an upgrade at receiver as well. So they have upgrades. But there are still a lot of concerns around this offense. They have an older quarterback coming off of a torn Achilles. Rodgers had some issues during his last full season as well. He had a broken thumb, so those issues are pretty excusable, and I'm willing to write that off. But it also does mean in order to see like top-level play from Rodgers, you got to go back to 2021. The Jets on defense don't have Hassan Reddick, and this comes after they lost Bryce Huff and John Franklin Myers in the offseason. So I know that Robert Saleh has this reputation for being a guy who can take projects along the defensive line and turn them into guys who can get really good contracts elsewhere. But the depth here has taken a pretty big hit across the offseason, and it's important to keep that in mind. They've drafted guys, and they have depth there, but it's more so they're taking small steps back at a couple different positions. So overall, the Jets defense, I think it's fair to expect a little bit of a regression for them from where they were at previously. Now, the Niners, you could say a similar thing about because they don't have a full Brandon Ayuk here. Trent Williams might not play every snap. It sounds like he will, but they could slowly ease those guys back in. But outside of that, this offense is basically the same as it was last year when they went to the Super Bowl. They were a world record basically the entire year. So I think laying the 3.5, even at minus 118, is more than okay in this specific situation. They are a very good offense. They're at home. And I have much fewer question marks about the Niners than I do about their opponent for tonight. So I'll take the Niners minus 3.5 at minus 118. I'm guessing based on the tenor of that discussion, you can guess that I like the over in this game as well. 43.5 is the total right now. Over is minus 105. I have this at 45.8 in my model right now. And a lot of that comes down to the concerns we discussed earlier on about this Jets defense. In general, defense is harder to predict year over year. You'll see defenses go up and down. So the predictability of defense is downplayed within my model, which means you got this amazing Jets defense from last year, still expecting to be among the best units, but it's fair to expect a step back before you even account for the personnel issues along the defensive line. This is a very slow-paced game, which does stink. It does drag down this total. If it were for the pace, honestly, I think this total would be pushing 47 or so. But I just think that the 49ers offense will do a lot of work here. And that's why I think they can cover, but also get us towards the over on this number. So we're going to take the over 43.5 at minus 105 alongside the Niners spread minus 3.5 at minus 118. Again, I'm not going to see value in the spread and the total for the Monday night game every week. Just so happens here that I do see value in both those numbers based on what my model is saying. And that does play into the player prop market as well. Because if we are high on the Niners to cover and the over to hit, that implies there's probably a bit more touchdown juice out there for the Niners individual players than what the market is implying. And there are a lot of different ways you could play that. I'm not going to go towards Christian McCaffrey, limited in practice for the 3 practices this week. Think he'll still be fine, but wouldn't be shocked if they do scale him back a bit. He's minus 170 to score. That's a bit restrictive personally. Deebo Samuel plus 170, Brandon Ayuk plus 195. I understand those numbers, but they're not my favorites. Instead, I want to go to George Kittle, who is currently 2-1 for an anytime touchdown for tonight. This is one of 2 routes I want to use to buy into Kittle for tonight. Again, I'm just expecting more scoring here in general for the Niners specifically. So seeing value in their markets, but Kittle specifically, I think is worth looking at here. If you look at the games that Kittle played last year, he had just an 18% red zone target share, which is definitely not an elite number. And you're not laying 2-1 on an anytime touchdown on that kind of mark very often. But that number may go up if Ayuk is limited. Now, I guess if he were limited, he'd probably be playing inside the red zone as if all other places. But also we have to keep in mind, Christian McCaffrey, not 100%. And McCaffrey had a 25% red zone target share. Yes, target share, not overall share in the red zone last year when he was healthy in the games that Kittle played. So slight downgrade to Ayuk, slight downgrade to McCaffrey. Last year, Kittle scored in 27% of his games, including the postseason. And the implied odds here are 33%. So he was below this number, and that's a concern. But the year before that, he scored in 39% of his games. And again, Ayuk might not be a full go here. And I'm higher on this offense than the market is in general. So yes, Kittle was below this mark last year, but he is at home. He is in a spot where I think this offense is a bit undervalued in general. And we got a couple of guys in Ayuk and McCaffrey who may not be playing every single snap the way they typically would for tonight's game. I think that opens up enough value to buy into Kittle 2-1 and feel good about him here. I don't mind Deebo Samuel plus 170. Just have a slight preference for Kittle personally at 2-1. I think you could also give strong consideration, though, to a different prop on George Kittle. And his baseline receiving yardage prop is, I think, 45.5. That's fine. I don't mind that. But with Kittle specifically, his 2 biggest attributes as a tight end are that he gets downfield work and that he can rack up yards after the catch. That's pretty conducive to alt markets. So I want to go towards Kittle to get 60 plus receiving yards at plus 172. Last year, Kittle averaged 1.3 downfield targets per game, which is a really good number for a tight end, second on this team behind just Ayuk. And he has that run after the catch ability, so it's not just the downfield targets that can help him get to 60-plus receiving yards. If you go back to last year, Kittle had 60-plus yards receiving in 53% of his games. That includes the playoffs where he played banged up. I was pretty high on him in the Super Bowl, didn't come through there because he was playing through an injury, and that number's included here, and he still did it at more than half of his games. We're getting plus 172 for tonight. It's not a super high number, 60-plus receiving yards. I think he can realistically get there. The Jets linebackers are pretty good, but so is George Kittle. So I want to take Kittle to get 60-plus receiving yards, plus 172. If I were to pick between that and the anytime touchdown, I'd probably go towards the receiving yardage number, 60-plus yards at plus 172. I think that's a slightly better market for me within this game. So taking Kittle plus 172, Kittle anytime touchdown 2-1 to go with the Niners spread and the total. One thing we'll do in this show throughout the entire year is lay out my favorite same game parlay for this game at FanDuel Sportsbook. Just kind of giving you a fun little dart throw out there that I think shows some value if you're looking for an SGP or if you have an SGP kind of offer for tonight. If I'm placing an SGP in tonight's game, it's going to be the legs we discussed earlier on that all play pretty well together. That is the Niners minus 3.5, the over at 43.5, all paired with the George Kittle anytime touchdown at 2-1. Because if Kittle scores, that implies that the Niners are putting points on the board, and it implies there are more points on the board in general. So all these bets play pretty well together. You combine them together at FanDuel Sportsbook, the current odds are plus 591. That's not bad, given how well these bets synergize together. And again, the fact that I'm just in general higher on this Niners offense in this game than the market is. This allows me to buy into that in a couple different fashions and get a lot of upside should my baseline assumption that the Niners are undervalued be correct. So again, if you give me one SGP for this Jets versus Niners game, we're going to lean into the Niners minus 3.5, over 43.5, and George Kittle anytime touchdown. Those combined at FanDuel Sportsbook plus 591 for tonight's game. That is all that we have here for this Monday Night Football preview between the Jets and the 49ers. As mentioned, doing this show each and every week, Monday, going through my top bets across the game. I'll give out my SGP as well to get you ready to close out the week, hopefully again on a high note. If you got any questions for me, I am on X at Jim Sonis. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Tomorrow, Liv Moods will join us breaking down her big takeaways from week one and a quick look ahead at week number 2 as well. Full week of shows coming your way here on the feed. Can't wait to talk more football heading into week number 2. Want to thank you all for tuning in. Enjoy Jets versus Niners for tonight. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.